let's talk about warming up. I don't know, is warming up even the right word? It's less warming up, it's more study time, your daily study time. So this is what I like to do for my daily study time. This is just a little bit of time spent doing figure drawings. And I do this as often as I can. It's sort of my favorite standard warm-up to do in the mornings with my big old cup of coffee. It obviously has a lot of versatility. You know, you could use about 1.5 billion hours of mileage with the figure. So doing it an hour at a time every day is certainly a way to get to 1.5 billion. But it's also very relaxing. I love it. You know, maybe it's a little less relaxing when you're just starting to grapple with the figure, but once you are more familiar with it, you know, even in a very rudimentary way, there's something so abstract and fun and lively and sinewy about starting your drawing day by drawing figures. It's great. So these are from reference. When I do these study times, I work from reference. I'm trying to be a criminal and steal high quality art ideas from nature. Yeah, I'm a crook. And my favorite place to steal from is from nature. My setup for this is pretty simple. I leave my sketchbook open in front of me. I look through my folders of figure drawing photos that I've amassed over the years, from free reference packs, paid reference packs, stuff I've just downloaded offline, all sorts of stuff. So I just look through those folders and I pluck stuff that just stands out to me that day, and I'll drop them on a big PureRef board so I can look at all of them. And then I'll take a very simple medium, usually, so pencil, or like you're seeing here on camera, an ink pen. This is a fountain pen. This is a Pilot Lucina fine tip. This is one that my wife gave me. I love this pen, with some sepia ink in it. And I like using the simple medium, especially ink. Ink is nice because it makes you look for nuance and the things that you like about the reference in the big picture, right? It's perfectly fine to look for what you like about a reference in the details, of course, but when you're just warming up, when you're trying to get your head on straight for drawing that day, it's really nice to start that by focusing on the big picture. That's the first thing that the audience sees, and that usually is the gateway to grace and punch and power in your drawings. So very nice way to kick things off. You can see with this first sketch that I'm doing here, I don't really have a set logical process for how I approach these. You can already see in this sketch that there's different methods being employed all over the place. You know, it looks like on that spine on the back, I started by looking for the overall gesture of that back in that spine and through that curve a few times, whereas different things are going on the rest of the figure. So aside from the spine on the back, on the sides of the torso, I just kind of threw the contour. And then on the arm that's extended to the right, I just went into sort of carefully following the structure from the outside into the inside and just kind of laid it in without much attention to constructing the gesture or anything like that. And to me, that is a great thing to explore in your study time, in your sketching time, in your free drawing time. Because really, truly, in every drawing, there is a variety of modes that would be appropriate for different parts of the drawing. So it's perfectly fine to stick to a drawing method or technique or school of thought that you have learned or been taught while you do your studies. But there's also a benefit to just remixing everything, to just kind of tossing everything around and going from linear drawing to value drawing to shape drawing to form drawing to contour drawing to gesture drawing, and mixing them all up at different stages in the process. That really makes sense. It's perfectly logical that that would be appropriate, because you're always viewing the reference, each moment in the reference that you're looking at, you're always viewing it through a lens, right? Everything is happening in life all the time. So every little bit of life has gesture, has shape, has rendering, has form, has structure, has contour, has simple shapes versus complex shapes, has straight versus curves. All of that is always happening everywhere on real life, on the figure in real life, on anything from real life. You are only noticing a particular aspect about any particular part of the reference because of the lens that you're looking through. So you could sort of have an ultimate lens where you're saying, well, everything that I like about this drawing at every moment of the drawing, I am interpreting it as a good gesture. You can have a different lens. Everything that I like about this reference, everything that I like about this real thing, I am liking it because of its strong value pattern right now. So I'm filtering everything into some sort of shadow shape conception to capture that value pattern, and on and on and on. The options are endless, of course. But in truth, everything is happening, and so there is likely a different, most effective lens for every part of the drawing. So the neck might not have a very strong value statement at all, but it might have a beautiful gesture statement. Whereas the head right on top of the neck doesn't really have a strong gesture statement, and instead is really constructed by its value pattern, by the shadows that the facial features are casting across the head. So in that case, is it really the best option to sort of go the classic regimented drawing curriculum, art school approach, and like, all right, well, whatever your reaction to any part of the figure, you're going to simplify everything down into these basic shapes with their gestures? Is that really the best way to go? Or should you remix? Should you feel comfortable just throwing the neck with a gesture-based reaction and then seamlessly transitioning into a value and shape-based reaction as soon as you get to the head? That's what I prefer. There's certainly benefits to making it easier for you to handle complex subjects by keeping everything in one lens. But I think it's really, really good, and I've learned a lot from my time spent just mixing things about with my experimentation time. Just let your mind flow, let your reactions flow to the thing that you're drawing, and don't get too caught up on if everything is playing nice or if you nailed it or anything like that. Just react as best you can to what you like about each part of what you're looking at. So on this second sketch that I'm doing here, you can see that I have, instead of trying to capture the whole pose, the whole figure, I have just vignetted it. I'm just looking at the torso, some arms. It's nice in sketchbook time to not feel constrained by anything. You know, don't feel like you always have to draw the figure top to bottom. Feel free to zoom in on the part that you find interesting. I also don't put time restraints for myself when I do these. Not anymore, at least. It's useful for various parts of your training to put a clock or to do a classic figure drawing timed variety thing, you know, where you've got 1 minute, then 2 minutes, then you do 5s, 10s, 20s, and you're sort of using the shorter poses to warm up for the longer poses. And then hopefully by the time you get to the 20, you're warmed up and you get a nice 20 out of it. I've done tons of that, and there's certainly a lot to be learned there, but I really like being more open with it when I'm just sort of doing this over my morning coffee. I like the idea that I can do okay, well, the first reference that I looked at, I really love this one. So do 20 on it, and then just do 5 on the next, and then 1 on the one after that. And then maybe the fourth one, whoa, I like that pose a lot. And then dump an hour into that one. I don't like the idea that the sophistication or depth of my reaction to the reference is being determined by whatever number was arbitrarily attached to that particular pose, you know? You experience that a lot when you actually go to life drawing in person with a model. You often get poses early on where you wish that was the 20-minute pose, right? And there's different constraints on that when you're actually in the room with the model. The poses that the models tend to do for 1 minute are not really appropriate to hold for 20 minutes a lot of the time. They're too dynamic, unless you get a really dedicated psycho model, which I've had a few who are willing to hold very dramatic poses for ridiculously long times. But you can't expect that from everybody. And that is fine, perfectly fine. Those considerations are absolutely the constraints of that particular environment. But if you're just doing what I'm doing here, where you're drawing through references and working from photos, why put that limit on yourself all the time, right? You should feel free to stay with something as long as it takes to have the reaction that you want. So for example, if a reference comes up, if one stands out to you from your board, and it seems to be primarily driven by gesture when you look at it, to throw a quick gesture that captures your reaction to it might only take a minute. And you may find that the gesture is really the only part of that reference that really does it for you. The lighting and the value pattern may not be that appealing, or it might not be naturally organized enough to lend itself to a sophisticated rendering that takes an hour or 2 hours. So why shove yourself into that? Why put yourself in that box? Just do the quick gesture and move on. And then when you find a reference that does have a well-organized structure to its lighting, to its values, that does make you just want to get in there and render those shapes, leave yourself open to, all right, well, that one doesn't have to be trapped into the 1 minute territory. I can just linger on that one. I think it's nice to give yourself that kind of freedom. Not to say that you can't put more structured constraints on yourself. You could say, all right, well, this month, every morning before I get distracted, before I have to go to work, before I have to get started on things I have to do around the house, every morning I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do 5-minute figure drawings from reference. That's perfectly fine to put those kinds of constraints on you, especially while you're trying to build the habit. But I do think that it's important for a lot of artists to eventually reach the point where you just accept, after you've proven it to yourself a couple times, that's really all it takes, a couple times, a few times. After you've proven it to yourself a few times, that if you put those kinds of constraints on yourself, you will follow through and do them for a reasonable amount of time. You don't need to prove that to yourself over and over and over again. That's evidence enough. You're the kind of person who can do that. It doesn't have to be a permanent thing. It doesn't have to be forever. It's just a little while on that structure, and then feel free to trust yourself and let yourself get more unstructured. Let other things happen. Let yourself bop and weave and turn and dive and move your practice left and right and do all sorts of different things with it. So don't get married to one practice structure sort of being the answer, right? Especially because if you really stick with one for too long, you can be diving into diminishing returns territory. Maybe not with figure drawing. Probably with figure drawing, the returns are pretty strong all the time. It's just so challenging and so hard that really, no matter how much of a grip you have on it, you're always learning new stuff. But with other kinds of practice, it's very quick for them to enter diminishing returns territory a lot of the time. And you would be better served switching your mind up a little more often, trying something new. And you will find that those things feed into what you're trying to work on anyway, right? You may be struggling to really understand how to design an appealing value structure over the body of the figure. And you may be banging your head against that for months and months at a time. And then you go do landscapes for a while. And for some reason, designing the attractive shadow shapes of trees cast across a beautiful field is abstract enough that now it clicks for you. That teaches you how to sort of wing it and make it up. And then you find yourself ready to bring that back to the figure in the naturalistic, more relaxed way that you needed to. It just needed to be, you needed to understand it in a different context for it to really click. So I don't think that you want to leave yourself closed off to possibilities like that by sort of always being trapped inside of one training style. Always feel free to move. And remember that there's always a balance to be struck when you feel the urge to change gears, right? Changing gears is usually, or the desire to change gears is usually one of two things. It's either you are picking up on an urge from the practice, you know, your drawing experience, your practice, the whole collective of your knowledge about how you're going through this thing is urging you to switch for some reason. And it's probably a reason beyond your conscious grasp. You know, a lot of it is subconscious. And that's a good thing to react to, but that needs to be balanced with the other reason that you might be feeling that, which is a lack of discipline, right? Now that, to say that it's a lack of discipline always makes it sound too much like an evaluation about the person. I think it's just my lack of imagination with words, or maybe we just don't have a good phrase that we all agree on for this kind of thing. But when I say a lack of discipline, don't take it as having any kind of personal or moral charge, right? It doesn't make you a good or bad artist or person to have a lack of discipline for something in drawing. It's just not a big deal, you know? So all of that to say, it can be instead, that urge to want to change gears can instead be a desire to get away from the thing that you really know you should be working on. So it really just comes down to being a balance between those two impulses. Is it something within you telling you that there's something else you need to be looking at to flesh out this understanding? Or is it just that you want to escape from the thing that you know you should be buckling down on? Always a balance. Even if you want to be buckling down on something, sometimes it really behooves you to just go take a break and do something else, whether it's drawing or not, so that you get a little more energy when you come back to the thing that you're supposed to be buckled down on. Nothing wrong with that. In the drawings that are on camera, you can see that I just laid in a large shadow area on the torso of that third sketch with some single direction hatching from the pen. Now, that's really for convenience of speed. I could have mapped out that whole shadow shape and then gone into that shadow shape and hatched around every form that was going in there to make that shadow shape have some implication of reflected light going on in there and the forms that are really going on in there. That's totally a viable way to go. It just takes way longer. And to do that, you would really just need to, you would have the same thinking hat on that you would if you were drawing forms in the light with ink. You would just need to raise the base level of pressure that you are putting on so that all of those lines come out a little thicker, a little darker, and get a little bit closer together so that they group down together into a darker value, a darker general value within that larger shadow shape. There's an alternative to that too, where you sort of draw them more the same way, at the same line weight and intensity that you would draw the light, but you go in after and put sort of the single directional hatching pass that I have there now, put that over the lines that are following the forms. That's good. There's ways to make that look really nice. It's just, it asks you to do a lot more balancing, I feel like, because then there's two different ideas being presented in that one spot. You're asking the viewer to decode two different kinds of things layered on top of each other. You're asking them to decode the generalized, abstracted, single directional lines that haze down the whole shadow shape. And at the same time, you are also asking them to track and parse out the hatching lines that are following the form and conveying the form. And when done beautifully, it's not a big deal. There's many successful examples of that. But like I said, it just tends to take a little longer. So when I'm doing these quicker study warm-up sketches, I will generally, for a big shadow shape, just knock that all back with single directional hatching and keep all of my form hatching to the light shapes. You can see on that head that there's the shadow from the eyes is being handled just as a simplified shadow shape that is being cast over the face. So that's an example of reacting to what I liked about that spot. But there's other moments in the light, like as that shadow shape that rolls under his jaw is gradating into the light, you can see that hatching is presenting more of the form than a crisp delineation of the shadow shape. And on to the last sketch here. This one starts with very little overall indication. I ghost in some lines for the head, but then I structure everything else about the sketch by just following the contours one by one and trying to place them just right. Now I got to be careful with something like just right. You know, ink is a tricky medium. To me, it's best to think of it as you are looking for how to fix a permanent line rather than nail a permanent line the first time. I think that can kind of drive you crazy if you focus on that kind of thinking for too long. So I just throw whatever feels right, and I am mindful of my proportions and the relative distances between things and mapping things out pretty accurately as best I can when I'm just sort of flicking my eyes from my sketchbook to my reference. But if I put something in the wrong place, I try not to get bummed out about that. I'm not actually worried or trying to nail the positioning perfect with the first line that I throw. I just want to be able to evaluate that I did get it wrong. That's better than not noticing that it's wrong, that it was too close to something, not long enough, too short. I'm happy to notice that I got something wrong. That means that my measuring eye, my analytical mind is on and is noticing things, and that means that it's practicing that and getting better at that. And then I just ask myself, all right, well, that mistake is now a permanent line in this drawing, so I'm not going to sweat it. I'm just going to wonder, is there some casual, intuitive way that I can fix it without botching the drawing, right? Can that erroneous part of that stroke get turned into part of another form in the drawing? Can it pick up some part of the contour? Is there maybe some shadow shape that I wasn't paying attention to that would actually overlap that erroneous line? And then I can use the shadow shape to give me a little extra width and adjust the silhouette, for example. That shadow shape will let me just push that silhouette wider, make it bigger. So I'm always looking for ways to fix the little errors that I get from the ink drawing. But I don't try to get too too worried by them or married to them or anything like that. I think that that's really good training for other more forgiving mediums, because that builds up over time an intuitive and casual mistake quick fix flow while you're drawing. So the objective flow of a line that you put down and the lines that precede it and then follow it is something like, in a super short span of time, honest attempt, evaluation, quick fix. Honest attempt, evaluation, quick fix. And that's a pretty nice, comfortable flow to get into. You just give something a wing, a nice attempt, which really sort of frees you up to be free to put a little jank and excitement on the line that you're throwing. And then you have some reasonable expectation that because of your experience, you're going to be able to likely find some adjustment that will correct its error. So you go for it, you evaluate intuitively, super quick, split second evaluation, and then you adjust, just a little fix, and then on to the next one. And it's good to keep moving. You know, that on to the next one part is really important. You don't want to get stuck on any part of a drawing. There's a time for that, but I do think that it's much later in the process for a lot of people. Some very particular artists do very good work by being utterly obsessed with nailing everything from the start. And that's great for them. And honestly, if you can do that, it's awesome for being prolific, because you can show any drawing at any time. You're always free to share it, because it doesn't matter if you only worked on it for 10 minutes or an hour or days. As far as you can tell, everything that is there, even after just 10 minutes or an hour, is exactly what you want it to be to your exacting standards. So that is great and a very fortunate art temperament to have. But for a lot of people, if you just sort of try that on and force it, it tends to make people burn out. If you're not automatically aligned to that, it can really, you start making all of these strange, unfounded demands on yourself that a lot of the time you're not ready for. It doesn't align with you temperamentally. It drains your energy. And then you just never wind up doing anything. You know, it makes drawing too much. Every time you look at your drawing table, you're like, oh, right, yeah, that's the gym, you know? That's where I go sit to have a drag. And that is worse than anything else you can do to your practice. You want to avoid that for sure. So I think for most people, you do want a process that is comfortable and intuitive for fixing and having reactions and making adjustments. This drawing, I've left plenty of open space around the shadow shapes. This little sketch is really determined by the shadow shapes. It basically needs no indication of hatching in the light or anything like that to communicate the form. I thought that face came out all right. Go figure. You can see on the hand there, I didn't want to get into doing all of the fingers, so to practice the proportion for myself, I just indicated with these little dashes where I thought the tips of the fingers would land, and that was enough for me to feel like I had evaluated the base of that hand. And it looks, you know, I didn't draw it out so I can't be too sure, but it looks about right. It looks like from the wrist to the knuckle is about the same length as from the knuckle to the tip of the finger, which is generally the proportion I use for a hand seen kind of flat on like that. And nothing to it. Just putting down a little general tone for the hair. Love hair. Always throw abstract shapes for hair. Free energy for the drawing. All right. Is that it? Think so. And that's it for this little sketchbook spread. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your figure drawings. All right, I lied. Quick bonus drawing, my dude. I couldn't help it. It's too much fun to draw. I just needed to add this one on to my sketchbook. Just throw it down super fast. You can see that I throw the contours on either side and use that to get the gesture, but then I don't throw the gesture as the center line because I know that's going to muddy up the abs that are open in the light, and I just want to let the hatching capture those open, clean, and simple. Getting those legs down there, muscles going in. There goes the arm muscles. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, get it. Oh, throw in the hand. Oh, that one, huh? I got lucky on that one. It actually looks not like crap for a quickly thrown ink hand, huh? Go figure. Yep, all shadow shapes on this one. Always looking for variety on something like that big shadow shape on the left as it moves over the abdominals and into the pectorals. And when I say looking for variety, I mean I'm looking at the photograph and I'm letting it teach me how sophisticated and nuanced that shadow shape can be. And that's really all it takes, baby. That's all it takes. Go for it.